Welcome back to another episode of Sitting in a Car. My name is Sarah Sproul and I sit in a car and talk to parents about sex, relationships, consent, all that stuff so they can talk to their school-age kids. This week I want to tell you about a friend of mine. His name is Robbie and he is HIV positive. And the reason I want to talk to you about him is because when he was 21 and he was diagnosed with HIV, his mum knocked it out of the park with the support she was able to give to him. And that got me thinking about parenting and how we can have conversations with our young people, our young kids, that will build a foundation for being able to talk about hard things later on. Robbie would tell you, if he was sitting here, that he had no hesitation in getting his mum to come into the hospital after his diagnosis. He was sitting with the social worker and they had said to him, "Is there anyone we can call for you?" And he said, "Absolutely, my mum." The hospital got on the phone and they rang her and they said to her, "Your son is in hospital. He's had some bad news. Would you please come in?" And Robbie would tell the story that she was in there like a shot and was able to support him coming to terms with the diagnosis of HIV that he had received really out of the blue. He would tell you, if you were listening to his story firsthand, that he didn't even know that HIV existed in Ireland, because that's where he lives, in Ireland. And he would talk to you about how the lack of sex education that he received really contributed to his lack of knowledge around that. And what that meant was he didn't know that he could protect himself from HIV as he was having intimate encounters with his partners. So back to the parenting part of it. Robbie would say that his mum had demonstrated to him and his siblings very early on throughout their life that she was able to deal with hard stuff, and she was able to love them and listen to them and care for them even when life wasn't going according to plan. So if you're anything like me, you have a desire for your kids to be able to come to you with any issues or complexities or problems that they might have, so you can support them in that. And in the same way that Robbie was able to go to his mom when he was diagnosed with HIV, I thought maybe it would be useful to talk through what were the factors or what were the influences that meant he was able to contact her and call for her help during that difficult time. Now, if you're in Ireland, you are very fortunate, because for the next few weeks on the RTE player, you will be able to look at The Late Late Show, the episode of The Late Late Show on February 15th, 2019. And you will see Robbie there talking about the experience he had during his diagnosis. If you're not in Ireland, I'm afraid you won't have the privilege of seeing that. But I hope in the future to be able to interview Robbie and bring his wealth of knowledge and his life experiences about this to the parents who follow me and who want to do the best for their kids. So this Sitting in a Car episode is inspired by seeing Robbie on The Late Late Show last night. One thing he said during that interview was that he had been shown by his mum that they can talk about hard things in their family, that she had demonstrated by the way she had responded to hard things that had happened in the past to his siblings, that she was able to support people during hard things, and the fact that she would talk about hard things in their family environment over dinner or over a cup of tea. So the culture in their family was, we talk about hard things. So that's the first thing that made it easy for Robbie to reach out to her when he was having a hard time. The second thing, now Robbie hasn't said this, but this is what I noticed just from observing him and observing Mary, his mum. The second thing is that she had demonstrated acceptance of imperfection and a rock-solid love for her kids no matter what. So he knew when he was contacting her that she loved him, and that love was not dependent on his perfection or his ability to get things right. So that was the second sort of foundational rock or building block in creating his sense of trust in her. And the third thing that I want to highlight for you is that Robbie has said in the past that he didn't know HIV existed in Ireland, right? So that means that he wouldn't have had a conversation with his mum about HIV. She wouldn't have been educating him about HIV. And the reason why this is important for us parents to understand is that sometimes we put a big burden on ourselves that we need to be talking about everything to our kids, that we need to be sort of the font of knowledge and wisdom for them. And Mary and Robbie's relationship and the experience that they went through together demonstrates that you don't have to have spoken about the particular issue that your kid goes through for them to come to you about that particular thing. The foundation that we build is foundational trust in our ability to manage hard things, and we can talk about hard things. And the third thing is we accept imperfection in our family. So just be aware of that. When we don't need to really focus on ticking all the boxes about knowledge to do with sexuality and sexual stuff as parents. But if we want our kids to come to us in times of need and times of crisis, those three building blocks are the most important things to tick off. So I hope this Sitting in a Car episode is useful, because if you are a parent that want to create that foundation that means your kids will come to you when times are really tough, those three building blocks that we see demonstrated in Robbie and Mary's relationship are the things that you can focus on, and certainly I can focus on as our kids grow up. And the earlier we start prioritizing those three building blocks, the easier it's going to be for us in the long run. And the easier it's going to be for our kids, because the trust becomes layered. So every week, every month, every year that we demonstrate those three building blocks, the stronger the trust is going to be in our kids. So those three building blocks, again, let me recap what they are. The first one is our ability as a parent to manage hard things. And when I say that, what I mean is our ability to manage our own emotion as we listen to a hard thing being spoken about by our kid, or as we witness our kid going through a hard thing. And that doesn't mean that we don't cry with them or feel upset. But what it does mean is that we're able to manage our emotion. Our emotion is our own. We have support from other adults to help manage our emotions, so that when our child is telling us the hard thing or we're seeing the hard thing, we are there to support them with our presence rather than be a burden on them as they're trying to manage our own pain and suffering as we see our child going through something difficult. When I say child, I'm projecting far into the future, but parenting is a never-ending game. So it doesn't matter how old your kid is, you are still going to be their parent. The second building block is that we talk about hard things, that we demonstrate, that we show our kid by our actions that we talk about hard things. Hard things can be things like the pain of something going wrong. We can discuss the pain of something maybe that we see in someone else when they're going through a hard thing. Or another hard thing might be the death of a pet, or the death of someone's death, the death of a child, that we are able to talk about something that is hard, emotionally difficult to manage. Some things can't be solved, but we talk about them anyway. And the third thing is that we accept imperfection, and we accept imperfection in ourselves as well as accepting imperfection in our child. And how do we demonstrate that day to day and week to week? So those are the 3 building blocks that as a parent we can focus on if we are prioritizing creating the foundation that allows our kids to come to us when times are tough and things are going wrong for them. That's Sitting in a Car for this week. I will see you next week for another topic, sitting in a car, that you as a parent can use to help build connection with your kid. And I'll see you then.